Missouri's playoff hopes might be on the line this week against Texas A&M, and I think the Tigers are going down.
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another Friday edition of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth, which we're so happy to have in season. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Full SEC picks and games to watch in the G5 because I tell you what, that G5 playoff hunt, it's heating up. And UNLV can pass Boise State in the running if they beat Syracuse later tonight. But first, game of the week in the SEC, maybe in the country. It's not game day, but it is a great football game. Missouri, Texas A&M. That's John Miller, Locked On Mizzou, joining me on the show. I think Missouri's going down. They've been wobbling against Boston College, against Vandy. They're going on the road. Texas A&M has found something since that season-opening loss to Notre Dame. John, why am I wrong?
Well, I think you're wrong for a few reasons, but off the top, I'll just say I just think Missouri's a more balanced team than Texas A&M. I think that if you're going to look quite simply at the quarterback position, the passing game, I think Missouri has an advantage there. And for as much as Texas A&M has a really good pass rush, that's the most concerning thing about this game to me. I just think the Tigers will be able to run the football a lot more effectively than Arkansas did last week, and I just think that balance is going to carry them through over Marcel Reed and the Aggies.
I don't disagree that Brady Cook should instill more confidence in Mizzou than whatever you're going to get out of the Texas A&M quarterback room. But I've kind of liked what I've seen from Marcel Reed. Connor Wegman beat him out to be the starting quarterback for a reason. So no matter which guy goes, and I don't think we have a clear word on that, I think Texas A&M's offense is capable enough either way. If this game were in Columbia, John, I would not like Texas A&M to go on the road and have quarterback questions there, but they're going to have the home crowd behind them at Kyle Field. And look, I know it was a neutral site win against Arkansas, who's not great, just okay. Like, I don't think Arkansas is a great team. We'll talk about them and whether they can push Tennessee later on today's show, but I think Arkansas is all right. I think Texas A&M in front of the home crowd, like that's what worries me is I think Texas A&M.
Do you like Arkansas better than Boston College? Do you? I don't know if I'd go
Arkansas,
that far.
Boston
Arkansas
College.
Has
I think
they have a higher ceiling, but Boston College is an actual real professional looking football team. Unlike Arkansas, when Thomas to turn it over like at an Auburn like level at times.
When Thomas Castellanos is actually playing for the Eagles, I think they're a solid ACC team. I don't know that if on a neutral field, I'd favor them over Arkansas. I think at the very least, they're in a similar class of team this year. Maybe I'll be proven wrong throughout the year.
I think Boston College is quite a bit better than Arkansas, but I think you're going to see Sam Pittman's squad pack it in pretty soon at the second half of the season like they're known to do, I'll be honest with you.
Well, speaking of packing it in, I love Mike Elko as a coach. I think he's a premier defensive mind, and it's one of the reasons I like him in this game. I think at home with the crowd behind him, that makes the difference against Brady Cook and this Missouri offense that, I mean, you can give me your own assessment, but from what I've seen of the Tigers, it's been fine.
Sure.
But it hasn't blown me away. And like I said, I think Texas A&M is really finding their footing.
Well, the thing with Mike Elko is I agree with you. I think he is a good coach. But the thing is, there's a real difference between being 5 games into your career at Texas A&M, whereas Eli Drinkwitz is in year 5 of his career at Missouri. I think it very well could work out for Elko. And by the way, I kind of agree with you on Marcel Reed. I think he's been pretty impressive. You got to remember, he's a backup quarterback, didn't start the year expecting to be the starter. I think he's done a pretty good job of managing the game from the Aggies from what I've seen. Again, this is just more, but the entire Aggie offense in general just didn't blow me away when I saw him against Arkansas last week. I was just much more scared of Nick Scorton and that Texas A&M front. That's the part of this game that worries me.
I think the key for Texas A&M defensively, force field goals. Missouri's probably going to gain some yards. Would I double cover number 3 on every single play? Yes, I would. I don't know if Texas A&M is going to go that far, but if Luther Burden is the focus of a Mike Elko defense and they're able to limit him, how confident in you or are you in the rest of Missouri's offensive weapons?
Well, again, I think it all comes down to, can Missouri protect Brady Cook? I think the left side of Missouri's offensive line this year has struggled at times in protection and pass protection. It hasn't been horrible, I don't think, but it hasn't been maybe up to the standard we need it to be. So that is a legitimate worry, but in terms of Missouri's actual offensive weapons in the passing game, Theo Weiss is a heck of a player too. So if you're going to leave him one-on-one all day, I think we can beat you with that, again, as long as you keep Nick Scorton from throwing Brady Cook around.
What's your thought on the Missouri defense against this Texas A&M offense? Because, like I said, I think the Aggies are winning the game. I don't think there are a lot of points scored in this game. I think this has an old school SEC sort of feel. None of this 41-34 nonsense in Tuscaloosa last week. I don't see that. I think both teams are under 24 points in this one, and I think Texas A&M can slug that out. But your confidence level in Missouri going against the Texas A&M offense, whoever is at quarterback, I'd probably go, even if Wigman is healthy, I'd probably go with Marcel Reed just because he's got the momentum right now. He's had them flowing. He's been winning football games for the last few weeks. I'd go with Marcel Reed here. But do you think Missouri's defense is good enough to keep the Texas A&M offense, which granted isn't elite, but also can do enough to win football games? Can they keep them in check?
Well, the thing with Missouri's defense so far is they've been quite good for the most part, other than, well, they've given up some explosive plays in the passing game, one against Vanderbilt at least, one against Boston College at least. But I'm not really seeing that being a huge thing that Texas A&M can take advantage of with this particular offense. Again, other than those explosive plays, which I think, hey, free safety, make sure you actually are the last guy back, that type of thing. These are fixable issues, in my opinion. Now, listen, if I'm sounding overconfident here, I don't mean to be, because this is Missouri's first road game. I just think this is such a huge spot for the Tigers. They're in a good spot, coming off a bye week. They have a bizarre game in Massachusetts next week. Yes, UMass, not
taking on the Minutemen.
We love the great state of Massachusetts, the Commonwealth. Excuse me. So,
yes, the Commonwealth.
That's a really bizarre scheduling, but it kind of worked out for this season.
Do you think Missouri's playoff hopes depend on winning this game? Because I think people understand by now, Missouri has maybe the easiest schedule in all of the SEC, so they could lose this game and still wind up at 10 wins.
Sure.
But if Missouri's sitting there at 10-2,
well, here, I'll answer it for you. They could lose this game and still beat Alabama. So technically, yeah,
right.
Obviously 11-1, but yeah, you're looking a lot different, of course. So it does really feel that way, even though obviously anything can happen in college football. Hell, Missouri will probably be, let's say, a 10-point underdog maybe in Tuscaloosa, something like that. I don't know. That's just a guess off the top of my head.
I think it was around 8 before the season.
Okay, so I mean that seems, I figured it'd be a little more than a touchdown, so that seems fair to me. Certainly not insurmountable, but a significant underdog there. So obviously, to your point, this is a huge game for Missouri. Is it technically a must-win game? No, but it's about as close as you're going to get.
Yeah, I chalk up the Alabama game as a loss. I don't think anyone's going into Tuscaloosa and winning this year. I think we saw how hard that was last week.
I'm certainly not going to pick that right now. I mean,
yeah,
maybe I'll feel different in a couple weeks, but yeah.
I'm certainly with you on that. And so I just wonder, 10-2 SEC, you say that blanket statement, yeah, you're into the college football playoff. But with Missouri's schedule, it's kind of like...
It's iffy.
It'd be iffy. I think there'd be some 9-3 teams out there that could have a better case depending on who they have played. But 10-2 probably gets you in. But let's wrap
more
this...
often than not, but yeah.
Yeah. I just wonder.
A borderline thing for sure.
Yes, I think it'll be more borderline than most SEC teams at 10-2 because the schedule is pretty weak. But let's wrap this segment before we get to our full SEC picks for Week 6. Did that come out right? I think so. I hope so. We'll just find out when I listen back to the recording. But Week 6 picks in the SEC are coming up. But first, let's start with this one. I've got the Tigers going down. I've got 21-16. I don't even know if it's that high scoring. But I think Texas A&M holds Missouri to field goals, little bend but don't break attitude for that Aggies defense. 21-16, give me Texas A&M.
You want me to pick now?
Yes,
I'm going to go
may.
20-7 Tigers, even lower score.
20-7.
I just don't see A&M really moving the ball that much in this game. Maybe I'll be completely wrong, and all you Aggies fans can come make fun of me.
If you want more predictions that are as exciting as that, make sure you stick around because we're getting to the rest of the SEC. That's coming up next. First, this episode brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans, guess what? You can start this season with a big, and I mean a big return on FanDuel. That's America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Do you want to bet college football? Do you think I'm insane with the SEC picks I'm about to give you? Do you think I'm sharp? Well, either way, you can ride, you can fade, you can do a little bit of both. You can do whatever you like. You can do whatever you want over at FanDuel because they have everything that you could possibly want for college football. All that stuff on the same page where you place your bets. I mean, they're just giving you everything you could possibly need to maximize your enjoyment of the sport. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So go to FanDuel.com. Check them out. America's #1 sportsbook is at FanDuel.com. Week 6 is upon us. Tennessee travels to Arkansas. We'll get to the rest of the games in the SEC as well, but this is a curious one to me, John Miller of Locked On Mizzou, because on paper, Tennessee, much better football team. Yeah. Big road favorite. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the Bobby Petrino story. I don't know if it's how they played against Texas A&M last week, and maybe I'm overvaluing the Aggies a bit, but I like Tennessee. They look like a 10-2 shoe into the playoff right now. Worst case scenario. I'm not picking the upset. I do think Arkansas covers 13.5. I think this just gets uncomfortable. Late night game. It's one of those games where you're like, I don't know. Every team, every year, whether you make the playoff, miss the playoff, win the national championship or not, you look back and go, how was that game competitive? Sure. Why was that close? I think this is that spot for Tennessee. Arkansas has not given up hope on their season yet. The key for the Razorbacks will be whether they can run the football because Taylor Green, not a high completion percentage guy. Can they run the ball on this stingy Vols defense? I think Tennessee goes into Fayetteville, wins. I'll take the cover, though, 31-21. Give me the Vols.
I think I'm with you on that completely. I think Arkansas covers as well, if only because to me, the 13.5, I know it's in Fayetteville, but that's almost a suspiciously low line to me. Like, our friends over at FanDuel, since they put it under 2 touchdowns, they're just begging you to take Arkansas, aren't they? Or they're begging you to take Tennessee. Excuse me. They're going, whoa, come on, the Vols are number 4 in the country. They've basically steamrolled everybody. But our colleague Eric Kane, we just talked to him on the SEC Squad show that came out on Thursday. He was really worried about the Tennessee offensive tackle situation. So if you are thinking about taking a side on that, definitely look at that intel on game day, leading up to it, the last injury report, that kind of deal.
I'm also curious with the Vols. They've run the ball so well. They've had a balanced offense. When do they run into a team, or do they run into a team that takes away their ability to control the game on the ground and makes Nico be more than just a complimentary guy who has been exceptional in that role so far this year, but he hasn't had a game like Hendon Hooker a couple of years ago where he's going for 300 to 400 yards through the air, where Tennessee can't run the ball and he has to throw it. If they run into a team, I'm just wondering, what does Nico look like in that scenario? I think that's the only question I have with Tennessee because they've really impressed me to this point in the season.
I agree with you. They've been about as impressive as they could be. But, yeah, again, to your point, if somebody can take away the ground game, that is sort of the secret sauce of Josh Heupel's offense. If he can just get those quick hitters up the middle going, they're really, really hard to defend. And
they become lethal in play action as well. Of course, exactly. That's a sizable if, because Tennessee offensive line, question or two this week, they've been very, very good this year. Bama going to Vanderbilt. Again, I like the underdog to cover here. Bama, the big emotional win. This is the emotional letdown spot. They're favored by over 20 points. Vanderbilt with Diego Pavia, as you know, John, better not be a football team anybody overlooks. Absolutely. They're a much improved unit. I know they've only won 2 games this year, but one of those was against Virginia Tech. They weren't supposed to win that game. Right. I don't think this is a close game by the end of it. I'm just taking Bama to win 38-20 on the road. It's a big number to cover following that game against Georgia.
I totally agree with you. I'm glad that we disagreed on Missouri and Texas A&M because I agree with your take once again. I mean, basically, I think Kalen DeBoer is going to do great at Alabama, but this is the type of spot where you miss the cadre old Nick Saban, because when he's just frowning the entire week, despite the fact that you just had an incredible comeback victory against Alabama, you needed that frown. I mean, I'm telling you, in the past with Saban, this is exactly the spot where you go, oh, Alabama, they're going to have a letdown. Nope, they cover by 2 touchdowns anyway. I'm just going to say this isn't nothing against Kalen DeBoer. This is more respect for Nick Saban. So give me Vanderbilt plus 22.5 as well.
Yeah, but I'm definitely taking Alabama to win the game by double digits. I don't think it'll be anything close, when Vanderbilt went to Columbia.
Like a nail bite or anything.
That's yeah. No, I don't think it'll be like when Vandy played Missouri or anything like that. See, I just kind of snuck that one in there.
Thank God we avoided that 2-point conversion off. That's all I can say.
Yes.
Thank you to the Vanderbilt kicker.
Yeah, shout out to college kickers, ever unreliable. But speaking of unreliable, Ole Miss's offense last week, where did it go? They sent out a search party. I think they put it on a milk carton, John, because they don't know where it went. It has not been seen for several weeks at this point. By lieu of their last performance was a dud. I like Ole Miss in a bounce back here. This was my upset pick for Ole Miss coming into the season. I thought they would have a letdown game. It happened against Kentucky instead of South Carolina. I think they sharpened themselves back into focus after playing nobody for the first several weeks of the season. I think they realized, hey, we're not coasting through every game. This is SEC play. They're looking for their first conference win. Give me the Rebels to go in to South Carolina, win the football game, and cover the 9 points, according to our friends at FanDuel, 38-27. I like Lane Kiffin's team to get it done.
This might be the most interesting game on the slate to me. It really is. And a part of me wants to take the Gamecocks in the upset. I just don't think I can be quite that bold, but I also don't think I can give 9 points for Ole Miss on the road either. I was an Ole Miss backer and believer in the preseason, but I also have to admit to myself, it's possible they're just not quite as good as I thought that they were. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna hedge my bets and say Ole Miss pulls it out, but I don't think they're going to cover the 9 points.
It could get spicy. LSU would tell you it's not an easy place to play. Underrated home environment. The
Gamecocks started off with a kind of a shaky victory over Old Dominion. They've been pretty good since, with a close loss to LSU, like you said. So
how much better, by the way, does that blowout win at Kentucky look right about now?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Kentucky pushed Georgia down to the wire. Kentucky beat Ole Miss. I think South Carolina is a solid football team. I just think Ole Miss remembers who they are this week. Speaking of remembering who they are, Florida has completely forgotten what it is as a football program because it has been so very long since they have done anything relevant or exciting. They play UCF this week, John, and I am 0-2 picking Florida in big games. I thought they'd beat Mississippi State. They did. Whoop-de-doo. Congratulations to me for that incredible prediction. Who could have foreseen that Mississippi State would lose a conference football game? They might go 1-11 this year. I can't get behind Florida. Even though they're at home, they've been embarrassed twice. UCF got embarrassed last week. I think they're playing with a chip on their shoulder. This is a bigger game for UCF than it is for Florida. Knights 27-13 over the Gators.
I like the call. I'm with you. I think UCF, wins and covers as well. They're not the greatest team on God's green earth or anything like that, but they can at least run the football, and there's no real indication that Florida can stop the run. And again, just on the line, minus 2.5 UCF on the road, your Johnny-come-latelys who don't pay that close of attention to college football are probably going, wait a second, aren't the Gators? That's Tim Tebow's team, right? We got to go with the Gators. But no, I think you got to go UCF here. I really do. I almost think Florida's getting maybe almost too much respect in this spot. By the way, Aggie fans, I did pick Texas A&M to beat Florida a couple of weeks ago, so you're welcome.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll help them. Georgia-Auburn to round out our Week 6 SEC picks, John. I think out of the gates, Georgia is going to run Auburn off the field, and then eventually Auburn will kind of make a comeback. Georgia will let up a little bit. I'll take another Auburn cover. I'm a big fan of the underdogs here. I won't be shocked if Georgia has a get-right game and wins like 45-6 and just says,
Sure.
Auburn, you're not any good, and Georgia, we are good. But I'm going 35-17. I think beyond the Alabama first half, Georgia's shown more cracks than I'd like to see in my preseason national championship pick. I still think that team is in there. They just haven't quite found it yet. And Auburn, as strange as it sounds, isn't that far off from being a good team. They're a ways away, but they're not.
They aren't. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Right. I mean, it's one of those things where, of course, statistically, turnovers can be very noisy. But at a certain point, if you're just turning it over every week, you start to wonder, maybe it isn't so noisy. Maybe this is just who you are. But there is definitely, to your point, there is a recipe here for Auburn making this a surprisingly close football game. It seems like we see this fairly regularly from Auburn, where they'll, throw out a stinker against the Cal Bears and play Alabama down to the, down to the wire in the Iron Bowl, that kind of thing. So I can't say I have any confidence in Auburn here, but it's hard to have a ton of confidence in Georgia covering 22 points right now. So I guess this is a stay away, folks. It's the ultimate stay away is what I'm saying. But if you're going to make me pick, sure, give me the 22 points in Auburn.
Yeah, I wouldn't hand it out as a best bet in the SEC se, but again, if
you're betting on Auburn, it's time to hit 1-800-GAMBLER.net or whatever the heck it is. Like, seriously, like Auburn, just stop it. There's better picks out there.
I completely agree. John Miller, Locked On Mizzou. We agreed on a lot, but it was fun. Anyway, John, appreciate the time.
Appreciate you, man.
The SEC is going to get several teams in the playoff. The G5 is getting one team into the playoff. And I tell you what, if UNLV wins later tonight as this show airs, you best watch out for the Rebels again. That's coming up next. First, let's talk about Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Yeah, that's right. That's the thing. Because curation, that's better for you. Makes it easier to save on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Whatever you are looking for. You get a panoramic seat of your view in the app before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect. They have their lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. UNLV has an opportunity to pass Boise State in the rankings. That's how the AP voters could see their game with Syracuse tonight. Allegiant Stadium, Rebels are favored. Quarterback change doesn't matter. Barry Odom, Brendan Marion and company, those guys are just good football coaches. That's what they have done. They're winning at a program where you're not supposed to win, where nobody has won in my lifetime. But the Rebels, along with Boise State, one of the favorites in the Mountain West. Now, here's how the Rebels could move past Boise State in the rankings and alter the G5 playoff race. And once again, I'll remind the good people of G5 football world out there, far be it from me to ever forget or miss an opportunity to remind everybody that the G5 is getting a team into the playoff this year, whether you like it or not. And right now, I'd put my money on the Mountain West champion. I might put my money on whoever beats the other team when UNLV squares off against Boise State in a few weeks. UNLV is really impressive. They've not just throttled Fresno State. They didn't just beat Kansas with a cross-country trip. They beat Houston too. And look, Houston is terrible. They are not good. But UNLV still has 2 Power 4 wins, a dominant win over Fresno State. Boise State has a really good win against Washington State. It's a good football team. Washington State should have been in the top 25 when they went to Boise. They were not. Alas, here we are. Boise State's in the top 25, but so too is UNLV. And when you're a Mountain West team and you have the opportunity to go up against somebody who is at the very least respectable in a Power 4 conference, which Syracuse absolutely is. I know they lost to Stanford. They're still a respectable team. That gets circled, that gets etched into the minds of those who are voting on college football, of those who are deciding the AP poll or the college football playoff or what have you. People remember that sort of stuff. So if UNLV goes out and makes a big statement on Friday night against Syracuse, do not be surprised if come next week when the AP poll comes out, if Boise State doesn't do what they're supposed to do against Utah State, which is, throttle the Aggies, don't be surprised if the Rebels are the highest ranked Group of 5 team in the country. Now, those aren't the only interesting Group of 5 games as the playoff hunt continues about, and there are some good teams out there. Make no mistake about it. It doesn't have to be a team from the Mountain West. James Madison is undefeated. Watch out for the Dukes. I know that they lost their head coach in the offseason. He's now tearing it up in Indiana, but JMU, strong program, a lot of support. They're 4-0. UNLV, Boise State, favorites in the Mountain West. Looks like a 2-horse race. We'll see if Tim Skipper and Fresno State can figure it out. It's a tough task. It's a tall task, not just for Tim Skipper to try to get himself free of the interim label as the head coach of the Bulldogs, but to also win a conference championship, compete for a conference championship at that time. It's not easy. It's not easy. Saw Jake Dickert do it many years ago at Washington State back when the Pac-12, RIP, had divisions. He was the interim head coach, and they very nearly came out of there as the Pac-12 North champions. They came up just short, and Jake Dickert was then hired as the head coach because it was a really valiant effort. That's what Tim Skipper is trying to do. I don't have a lack of confidence that he can figure it out there. I just don't know if Fresno State can elevate to the level where Boise and UNLV have been, because they've been really impressive. And if UNLV wins this game, they're sizable favorites. They're favored by around a touchdown against a Power 4 team. I know they're at home, but are you telling me, FanDuel, that if UNLV went to Syracuse, went on the road against an ACC school, you'd favor them? That's bonkers. That's bonkers. UNLV isn't even supposed to be favored against any Mountain West team, but Barry Odom and company, they are coaching themselves right into a bigger job at some point. That is going to be a hot, and I mean a hot commodity. The go-go offense, I love the go-go. I'm a big fan of the go-go. Please put me down as a fan of the go-go offense with Brennan Marion. It's just fun. It's unique. It's exciting. It's up-tempo. It's creative. It's explosive. It does all sorts of really good things. And at the end of the day, are they running a lot of the same concepts that everybody else does and it's a lot of window dressing? Sure. But is that window dressing exciting and fun to watch? You bet your rear end it is. They got a quarterback who can run. He can throw a little bit as well, but the Rebels like to run the football, and they're just a good football team. They're just a good football team. So if they add a third Power 4 win to their resume, boy, that is going to put them in really good territory to push for the G5 playoff spot. Now, do they have to win the Mountain West? Yeah, of course. Of course you do, because unless you're going to go 12-0, that's not going to happen, right? Syracuse, Utah State, Oregon State, Boise State, Hawaii, San Diego State, San Jose State, Nevada. Wait a minute. Now you have to go to Corvallis. That's going to be a difficult game. You get to host Boise State, though. You don't have to go play on the blue turf. You don't have to play on the Smurf turf. You can play on your home field in the cozy confines of Allegiant Stadium, however full that beautiful spectacle of football ends up being for a home game against the Broncos. And I'm sure you'll have plenty of Boise fans in the building come October 25th. But I'm just throwing it out there. What if UNLV? Now, we asked the same questions about Air Force a year ago. Hey, they're 6-0. They're ranked in the top 25. What if they go undefeated? And then it didn't happen. Turns out going undefeated in any conference, no matter who you are, is incredibly difficult. You know why? Because even if you're not playing a high level of competition relative to the rest of the country, you don't have the same level of talent on your roster compared to the rest of the country that is pushing for a college football playoff spot. So UNLV is an at-large. That's a dicey proposition, but not an impossible one. Not when you've got not one, but two, but potentially three Power 4 wins. If you were to toss Oregon State into the mix, be kind of hard to overlook the Rebels in there. But they're focused on getting the Mountain West Championship. I'm sure Barry Odom is just focused on beating Syracuse. It's not going to be an easy football game. Kyle McCord and the Orange, they're having a solid first year for Fran Brown and company. Can they go on the road? Can they figure out how to crack the code that is UNLV? Nobody's done it so far. Kansas couldn't do it. Fresno State wasn't close. Houston wasn't close. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Lots of fun to watch. Boise State, by the way, about a 3-touchdown favorite against Utah State. They should steamroll. They should steamroll. And at a time where your Mountain West competitor, whose resume you might be compared to going into a conference championship game situation, or if the craziest were to happen, I'm just saying, Boise State doesn't have all the Power 4 opportunities necessarily that UNLV does. Now, Boise State has a close loss on the road to Oregon. That continues to look pretty darn good for both sides. Quite frankly, it's still a loss. UNLV doesn't have one yet. I think for Boise State, you might want to root for UNLV to lose just in case. Just in case it comes down. Now, they're in the same conference, so would they get compared side by side for a playoff spot? Probably not, unless the crazy were to happen and they were to win like 11 games and 12 games, and then one wins the conference title but somehow is in the highest ranked, and you had an at-large resume off. That probably won't happen because college football is historically normal, right? Yeah. Okay. For those listening on podcast, I winked in really, really poor fashion. A couple other games to keep an eye on in the G5 this week. Again, big fan of the G5. They're getting a team to the playoff. Whether I like it or not, that's a thing that's going to happen every single year for the next 2 years. And even in that new proposal that the Big Ten and SEC want to have 4 auto bids each, they still let the G5 get an auto bid. Navy and Army, those are American teams, remember. Don't forget that. Navy's 4-0, 10-point favorite on the road against Air Force. Army's 4-0, 11.5-point favorite against Tulsa on the road. Are they both winning? Are they going to keep things going? Watch out. Watch out for the service academies. Now, Air Force couldn't keep it going last year. Last time I checked, these teams are not Air Force. That's who Navy plays this week. But am I interested? Yeah. Yeah, it turns my head. Turns my head because that 0 in the loss column for any Group of 5 team looks a lot better than a 1 or a 2 or a 3. Tulane's got 2 losses. Memphis has got 1 loss to Navy. Yeah, you thought of Memphis as a G5 playoff team coming into the year. Well, guess what? You better think of Navy that way as being capable because beat them head-to-head just like that. I'm excited for another weekend of football, as always. I appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.